Peace everyone, Unmask Art here, and welcome back to the Drawing Journal. Alright everyone, so today we are going to be testing a bit of colored pencil on sanded paper. Now this is something that I've come across quite a number of times over the past year. I've done it twice now, but both times was with the brush and pencil technique. So it was a little bit different than what I'm going to do today. Today I'm just going to straight up use colored pencils as though I'm treating the sanded paper like a normal piece of paper that I would use when working with colored pencils. So I have some Luminance pencils here. I have some Polychromos pencils. Because they are a little bit different from each other, I figured why not test the different types of pencils on the paper just to see what kind of effect that I get. So the paper that I am using is the Uart 800 sanded paper. It's designed to be used with pastels, but a lot of people really enjoy working with colored pencils on this paper. One of the things that I'm going to be doing is just some little circles here. Now I sketched out these I traced these circles out with graphite. So the first test I want to do is just to see what kind of erasability this paper has. I'm using a kneaded eraser and I'm just going to go around and try to lift up this graphite to see if it lightens up the way a normal piece of paper would. And when I was kind of worried about using graphite on this paper because I really had no idea what kind of effect it was going to have, but it kind of just felt like using charcoal in the way that it grinded onto the paper. One of the things that I kind of liked about it is that even though I used a really light hand when tracing this circle, the graphite, as you can see, shows up really, really dark, but it seems that I can erase it pretty good, even though it went on much heavier than I anticipated. I'm going to actually try to get rid of it completely, see how much of erasability it does have, and it seems to be quite good actually. Now I still see the graphite there, and it doesn't seem to want to go away completely. I'm going to keep rubbing here for a second and see if it goes away. So it still shows up, but it's very, very faint, and I don't think it's going to go away completely. But it is faint enough that I have full confidence to say that it's totally coverable by my colored pencils. So that's good, because one of the things that you're going to get with the sanded paper is, for those of you that use a light box or something, I don't think it's very likely that with these sanded papers you're going to be able to use your light box to transfer images. You might have to use a projector or using the grid system, and if you use the grid system, then you're going to have all these lines in it. They don't seem to want to erase very well, so you might want to learn back tracing for this, or get yourself a cheap projector. Hello Steve, Anna, Linda, Coffee Cat, Gihan, Christy, Silver, Stephanie, Wicked, and Alicia. Hopefully I pronounced that right. But thank you guys for coming to the live stream today. I'm glad to have you here, testing out some sanded paper with these pencils once I see how well it erases graphite. So overall, it's not going to erase the graphite nearly as well as regular paper, but the purpose wouldn't be to draw on this with graphite, it would be to draw on it with colored pencils. And I have full confidence that using colored pencils is going to allow you to cover up any of that excess graphite that you might have. Let's see if I have any questions right off the bat. I'd be so worried to wear down my precious luminance on paper. Yeah, well, that's one of the things that I've noticed. Like I said, I've used sanded paper before, and specifically Uart paper. And but I was using the powder blender, so I was barely using any of my pencil, so it didn't wear it down that much, so it was fine. But yeah, I'm right there with you as far as like grinding down the pencils. That's why I never really went to try sanded paper before, but I feel obligated at this point. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my first Luminance color. This is 159, and we're just gonna see what this looks like. I have my blender, or my solvent here. We're gonna use a solvent to see how that goes. The amount of pressure that I'm putting on the paper is extremely delicate. So what you're seeing show up on the paper here, I'm not adding any pressure whatsoever. We're gonna kind of test out how much of this pencil it uses, and I'm just gonna do these kind of spherical shapes to get a feel as to how this is going to respond. I think this first circle I'll just use the Luminance pencils, the second circle I'll use the Polychromos, and I think the third circle we'll just do a combination of both of them and see what kind of effect we get here. So far it doesn't really feel like I've worn down much of the pencil. Hopefully that sandpaper sound is not being picked up in the microphone too much, because it's pretty loud. Significantly louder than other papers, the smoother stuff. Now, one of the reasons that I've always refrained from switching to a sanded paper for my colored pencils is because I don't like texture when I work with colored pencils. When I'm working with pastels, it's a different story. I love using the sanded paper, especially Uart paper with the soft pastels, because it negates all that excess texture once you put enough layers down. But with colored pencils, I've never felt like I've been able to put enough layers on sanded paper to clear the texture, and it always ends up looking like the grains of the sanded paper are showing through the final image. So I'm going to do a little bit of burnishing, a little bit of blending with solvent, and just see how far I can take this paper. When using grid, you could do it so that you draw only the corners of the grid boxes, just a dot in each center. Yeah, you can. There's plenty of ways to get around drawing those vertical and horizontal lines, but I think the best route to take would most likely be backtracing. And if you use the gridding method, you should actually never draw your grid lines on your final page. You should do it on a scrap piece of paper. What you do is take a scrap piece of paper, do all your grid lines and everything, sketch out your drawing using the grid method on that scrap piece of paper, and then just turn it over, cover it with like charcoal, and then lay it down onto your final piece, and then trace your image that you drew with your grid, and it will leave a nice ghost image onto your final paper. That way you don't have any lines that you have to worry about erasing or anything like that. That's yeah. That's what I would recommend if the light box doesn't. I don't have a light box, so I can't test it. I guess I could have held it up to my window to see if I could see an image from the other side. Okay, so the tip of my pencil so far hasn't worn down all that much. It's not too bad. I don't feel like it's worn down really much any more than had I done this same exact thing on a different piece of paper. So far That's kind of surprising. That's kind of a surprising aspect to this. This is interesting. I usually use the 600 grit sandpaper for pastels, pastel pencils. Let's see how this goes. Yes, indeed. Are there any advantage to using paper like this? Well, I think it's Tasha. I hope that's how you pronounce your name. I'm not quite sure what the advantages are. I've heard plenty of advantages, and I personally haven't worked with it in a way that allows me to specify what those advantages are. So that's kind of what today's all about. I want to see if there is any validity to the advantages that I've been hearing. And some of the advantages are that you can cover the paper faster with less pencil, that you get a more consistent blend with solvents, and I'm not sure if I've heard anything else. More layers. That seems obvious to me. More layers. You should be able to layer much farther with your pencils. Alright, I'm going to switch colors now to kind of a greenish color. Still working with the Luminance pencils here. Just kind of get all these colors laid down, and I think what I'll do is I'll blend out with some solvent and see what kind of effect that I get as far as the the transition between colors, the effect that the solvent has on the paper, and the overall coverage that I get with that first initial layer. But I didn't have to sharpen my pencil, and I still have quite a bit on the tip that I could use to continue coloring and continue adding layers. Let's see if I can fill in this entire circle and how much coverage I get without having to sharpen my pencils at all. You can get even Polychromos white to show over darker area. That was the other thing that I wanted to test, was how well the white pencils show up over dark colors. So what I did is I chose 5 colors and then white and black for both the Polychromos and the Luminance. So I'm trying to be a little fair with my comparisons here between pencils to see how well they work. Now on normal paper, I feel like the Polychromos white is almost completely pointless. It's so translucent. So I really want to see how well that Polychromos white shows up on this paper, and how well both of the whites go over top of dark colors. So I'm going to just work with the colors first, and then we'll test out the black and the white and just see what kind of effect the paper has on the pencil and on the color. Oh, hello Christine and Crazed Noob. Good day to everyone. What about Prismacolor Premier pencils? So I was thinking that I'd use Prismacolors, but the truth is Prismacolors and Luminance are pretty much the same in the sense that they're like the thicker wax-based pencil. So I figured that if the Luminance work well on the sanded paper, then I can't imagine any reason that the Prismacolors wouldn't also work. So instead of using all 3 pencils, because it kind of just felt redundant to use Luminance and Prismacolors, so I just went with the 2 extremes, the Luminance and the Polychromos, to see what kind of effect we get. If the Luminance work fine, which they seem to be working okay with the paper texture is still showing through at this point, but as far as blendability with solvents, layers, coverage, all that stuff that I want to test, I imagine that the Prismacolors will work very similar to the Luminance. So I decided to just go with the Luminance and Polychromos. The one thing that I have to say right off the bat is this entire time I've barely been even touching the paper, like with my pencil. So the coarse texture of this paper just forces the colors to show up, and it does make things faster, and it does make things easier to color. So I have to give it up to the paper on that. It is not my technique in any way that's making this sphere fill up with color. It's really just laying right down onto the paper so easily. It almost kind of feels like a pastel pencil a little bit. It's not as chalky feely, but in the sense that it takes little to no effort for the pastel pencils to transfer over to the paper. It's taking little to no effort for me to transfer these colored pencils over to the paper. It's just laying down really, really easily. So that's one thing that is true for sure about working on the sanded paper, is it does appear to be much easier to get those colors to transfer over onto the paper. Just about done filling this in, and we'll grab some solvent here in just a moment. I do have to say that, so I've used 4 colors so far, going from this darker bluish to a darker green to a lighter green, even lighter green, and now to a light blue color. I don't see a lot of color difference between those 3 greens that I used, so I'm wondering if that has something to do with the paper, or maybe I just need to blend out with some solvent to get those differences to show up, or just simply add more layers. Kind of feather this light blue out here a little bit, try to add some obvious differences between those color stages. Okay, and now I'm gonna work backwards with my colors a bit. So I take my green again. I just want to make sure I have plenty of pigment on the paper before using the solvent. Oh, hello Riss and Sandra. Ankush, welcome. It seems like because of the grit, the pigment is high and the colors look a lot brighter for the first pass. Yeah, I think that's what it is. The picture of your huge screen, yeah, that was impressive for sure. That's a pretty rad setup for sure. Watching YouTube videos or watching movies as well. I imagine I would probably use that to watch movies. Speaking of movies, I know this is totally off topic to what we're doing, but anybody watch any good movies recently? Let me know. Anna and I were planning on seeing Shape of Water this week, if we can figure out whether or not it's showing in theaters, but that movie just looks really, really cool. So we gotta go see that one. We watched the new Star Wars movie as well, which we both liked. It was good. I think it was better than the last one. So at least there's that. Okay, so After doing this second pass with my greens, I am starting to see a more obvious difference between the colors, so the second layer is really helping out here. Getting a bit better coverage, which, you know, makes sense. Doing a second layer always makes colors show up a bit better. No difference there as far as normal paper. The tips of my pencils, for the most part, they're pretty good actually. I mean, I use this one quite a bit. You can see it's like flat on this side where I used it mostly, but for the most part, I definitely can continue using that color for quite some time before having to sharpen it. And I covered it up quite well. I mean, I feel like the paper is covered up a lot. And I would, you know, I'm almost hesitant to say that I think it might be covered more than a normal piece of paper. Even though there's still a lot of grain and a lot of paper texture showing through and it's not quite burnished or anything like that, I feel like I got really good coverage really fast. I don't feel like I've been doing this for very long. You watched Troy the other night? I haven't seen that movie in a long time. The last season of Vikings. You know, I keep seeing that, and I think you recommended it to me before, but I haven't taken the time to start watching that series. But you said it was really good. I gotta step up my TV series game. I feel like I don't have anything else to watch because I finished Black Mirror. I binge watched that like crazy. That was such a good series. I love that series. If you guys haven't seen it, Black Mirror on Netflix. I think it's on Netflix. I don't know. It is just super entertaining in the sense that it's very philosophical and it explores like a lot of different morality questions regarding technology, like advanced technology that could quite possibly be a thing of the future, and just really unique stories on the exploration of like technology and how it affects us, and it was a really cool series. I enjoyed it a lot. I can't wait for more of them to come out. Hopefully they never stop because they're so good. Okay, darkening up this edge over here a bit, and I think after I use this color, I'm gonna go ahead and grab some of my solvent here and see what happens. I wonder if this will do what Wiggleluja said it did to her on Pastel Matte. Yes, everyone watch Black Mirror. Season 3 is the best. You know, honestly, I don't know if I could say there is a best season because I enjoyed like every episode. I mean, you can't even really call it an episode because technically it's an anthology. There's different directors for every... calling it a season doesn't even really sound right because every episode is technically its own mini movie. Some of them are like an hour and a half long even, like full-on movies. And the stories between episodes... there's no storyline that I can follow between episodes, and every story is unique and different in its own way. And yeah, it's just an experience. It's just an experience. You have to watch it. I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix. All right. We got some colors down now. Let's see. I'm gonna brush this off a little bit. Oh, look. I don't know if you can see that, but I actually took off and brushed some of the pigment on and smeared it kind of onto the rest of the thing. I wonder if I can blend it with my finger. I do get some pigment on my finger, and I do see a little bit, but I don't want to use the oil on my fingers to do that. Let's just grab my solvent here. Try this out. I think I'm going to go light to dark here. So just a small amount of solvent on my brush. Let's start in the lighter areas. Yeah, my brush is dirty here. I need to clean it up a little bit. I have a lot of blue on it from my dolphin that I'm working on over on Patreon. There, that's better. Alright, starting here, small amount. Okay. That's weird. Huh. Okay, I'm not really seeing anything happening right now. It's like, it's either really slow or it's not working. I'll just continue, because it's starting to do something, but it feels like it's super slow. Okay, I think maybe I'll try a bit more thinner. Let me go a little bit heavier here. Okay, yeah, maybe I just need to use a bit more thinner. Okay, it's kind of different looking. It's definitely making those colors come out, but it's hard. It's almost smeary, like paint. It has a completely different texture when using a brush. It feels, it kind of acts like wet pastels. If you've ever tried blending pastels wet with like alcohol or something, this is what it feels like right now on my brush. Creating some kind of weirdness. I'm trying to get it to look even, but I can't seem to tell how to make it look even. And it makes I feel like the edges here are darker. Try to soften it a little bit. Huh. This is definitely weird. And at this point I can't say it's a good weird. I don't really like this, the way it's blending with the solvent right now. It looks terrible in my opinion. Maybe it takes a few layers, so let's just blend this out and see what it looks like after it's dried, I guess. Because this is just, it has this really weird, obvious brush texture that I don't ever seem to get when working on normal paper. How is the commissioned tutorial coming? It's not coming at all. I literally have not done a single thing on it. But thanks for asking and making me feel bad. I'm kidding. No, I have another project that I'm working on for Colored Pencil magazine, and that's taking priority over everything because it's due in like a day. And I barely started. I'm super far behind on everything, and I'm trying to feel bad about it, but I'm really not. I can't feel bad because I just don't know how to put it. I've just been taking things slowly, trying to get back in the groove of everything. Trying to get my website to work better, because if any of you have recently bought my Intro to Colored Pencil course and have had any issues whatsoever with the download, yeah, the people at Weebly that host my website, they just don't seem to understand that I need the file to be uncorrupted when I talk to them and say you need to fix this, and they say they fix it, and then I try to download it, and I can't at this point I can't even download my own colored pencil or pastel course because it doesn't want to work. And so every time somebody purchases it, I have to wait for an email from them to send them a new link. So it's just a big headache at this point, and it's really hard to communicate with Weebly because of their hours. In America, and I'm over here in Poland. Okay, I gotta be honest. I have to retract a bit of what I said about not liking this blend, because even though it's not smooth, and I guess I shouldn't expect it to be all too smooth. This was literally the first layer, and I really didn't add a whole lot of pigment. Like, I seriously did not add a lot. Like 2 layers maximum. I barely ever touched the paper. I let the paper do all the work. And now that it's started to dry, it is so opaque. The colors are so opaque. It's kind of blowing my mind right now. I'm starting to understand why people love working on sanded paper. There's definitely going to be a learning curve here if you're used to just working on regular paper, because it takes a little finessing with the blending method, the wet blending method here. So I'm going to just dry my brush off and see how well I can smooth out some of those brush strokes showing through. But for the most part, I can't get over how opaque the colors have started to show up. Like, I can still see the paper here with some of the lighter colors, but on these darker colors, you can just see how dark it is. Like, it's kind of crazy to me right now. I have to be honest with you. I'm a little blown away. The only thing I want to make sure I can do is kind of overall soften and get rid of the brush strokes. I don't want brush strokes showing up on the final piece, regardless of what I'm working on. And gosh, my brush is totally dry right now. It's totally dry, and I'm still getting brush strokes. That's gonna drive me nuts. But those colors, you gotta love those colors. They look so nice. They look really nice. Okay, I can't tell if it's dry. When I touch it, I get color on my finger though. It feels dry. I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna add another layer. But I mean, goodness, you guys have to let me know what you think so far with this. Let's see. I must have missed a few things in the chat. Let me just see. Have you tried the new powder blender? Yeah, I tried the powder blender. Kim, I did a live stream. I did a series of live streams last year. I think around June timeframe. I think around June. If you go back, I did a series of live streams where I used all the powder blender and the brush and pencil products, and I did a piece from beginning to end over a series of like 3 or 4 streams. I tell you what I'm doing, I show you everything, and I kind of give you my first impression and everything like that. So you can go back and check those out if you want, but yeah, I definitely did it. Maybe using a sponge may help, or a foam brush. Possibly, I could try that. They do seem to work a little like pastels. The only thing is with the sponge brushes, solvents aren't really good for them. Yeah, you're not the only slacker, Christine. I'm definitely slacking right now, to be honest with you. I used baby oil for solvent, but it was so much and it was messing up my drawing. Yeah, baby oil should never be used ever with anything ever, because baby oil is it's not archivable and it will turn your paper yellow over time, like really quickly over time. So never use baby oil. Let's see. It does seem it would be well for galaxies. Yeah, I do think so. No, Zen, this is not watercolor pencil. This is just regular luminance wax-based pencil and a solvent. So yeah, the pigment is very, very, very moverable. Like, it just goes forever. Yeah, it does look good, Nicole. Thank you. Let's see. You also see the brush strokes. Well, I imagine if you're watching it on the screen that you showed everybody. First time watching? Well, thank you, anime lover. I'm glad you were able to make it. How about trying a light color over the darks just to see? Yeah, that's. I'm gonna do a second layer first before I jump into like the other experiments. I'm gonna start back with my light color here, the light blue, and do another layer. I just wanted to give it plenty of time for drying because I'm so new to this. I actually couldn't tell, because to be honest with me, right now it's so vibrant and so opaque, I can't tell if it's wet or not, and it worried me. So I just wanted to give it plenty of time and try to catch up with the chat before moving on to this layer here. I'm still not pressing. Okay, so this is a huge difference than normal paper, because when you get to the later layers on normal paper, you have to press harder for the pencil to show up, and I'm not pressing at all. I'm really not pressing. I'm just letting the pencil touch the paper. Gosh, the effect though is so, I don't even know how to describe it. It's so pastel slash paint like. Okay, well, for one, you can see, hopefully you can see just how opaque this blue went over top of that green that was there. It actually showed up quite a bit more than I wanted it to. But it's super opaque, and I'm not even, I don't even know how to describe the emotion right now. Like, I'm not even touching the paper. I'm touching the paper with such amount of gentleness that I don't even understand how it's transferring over. How does it compare to the paper you did the apple on? The paper that I did the apple on was the Magenta Touch paper. The Magenta Touch paper is a smoother, it's a sanded gesso paper, which is different than sanded paper. Like, this is actual just sandpaper. It's just sandpaper, whereas the Magenta Touch is gessoed paper that has been sanded. So the texture is a lot different, in my opinion. And on the Magenta Touch paper, it feels more like normal paper, whereas this feels like I'm rubbing a pencil on sandpaper. The Magenta Touch paper feels similar to the pastel matte paper, in my opinion. A little bit rougher, I think. The pastel matte has more of a velvety feel to it, but this, if you've ever touched sandpaper, this is sandpaper, just straight up sandpaper. So there is absolutely no way, I just have to mention this real quick, there's no way I would get that much color, that much opaque of color on normal paper and not had to have burnished, for one, and two, sharpened my pencils twice by now. Okay? Like, I am legitimately in shock as to how this is working out, because I did not try any of this before today's live stream. This is literally my first time trying this stuff here, and I was not hopeful. I wasn't. I was a little cynical, I think, and I thought it was going to be a disaster. I thought everything was going to look like garbage, and now I kind of don't know what to say, because I was prepared to say this is a waste of time, but I can't. I honestly can't. If you're looking at my face right now, this is shock and disbelief. I'm sort of mesmerized by how this is turning out. Okay, let's go shade darker now. The important thing at this point is I want to see how smooth I can get this. I want to get the nice, consistent, smooth colors. The smooth gradient, one to the next, one color to the next. That's my goal at this point. Uart paper does not come in colors. All Uart paper is kind of a really light khaki tan color. It just looks like sandpaper, but I don't think you can get it in anything other than this. I think it's just this single color. If anybody knows, let me know in the chat if Uart paper does come in other colors, but I've never seen it in any other color than this standard light tan color. And I've been buying it for a little over a year now, so yeah, I haven't come across it. Maybe they've come out with it recently or something. I just don't know. I haven't bought it in a while, but you really like how it looks, Stephanie? Yeah, I do too. This is, you know, I was a little bit more hopeful for the Polychromos, because the Polychromos work really well with the powder blender, and I've done a little bit of the powder blender stuff with the Polychromos, and after a million layers and spraying it with the textured fixative, I was happy with the way that it came out. And I really didn't think that the Luminance were going to do anything, but gosh, they look so good. They look so good, and I don't know what to say. I'm at a complete loss of words right now, and I just want to spend all day coloring this sphere until I get the perfect gradient. That's what I'm going for. I want the perfect gradient. I want these colors to be so smooth that it literally looks like a ball. But it looks pretty good right now. And I'm not, jeez. I wish I could express how delicately I'm touching the paper, because I'm I don't even think it's doing anything to the tips of my pencils at this point because I'm touching so gently. Blend with odorless mineral spirits 2 to 3 times for smooth blending. You will notice the pencil will lay down a bit differently once you get that much on there. I don't know if I can change papers. I love the hot press watercolor paper. Yeah. That's, you know, that's where I was kind of settling with as well. I was like, I don't want to use sanded paper because I love the paper I use right now, you know. But I don't know. There could be a future in which I use sanded paper on a regular basis because this is pretty rad. This is pretty rad. I'm seriously just. If you've never done it, just buy a sheet of sanded paper and just do some experimenting. Just do what I'm doing. Just draw some circles or whatnot and go for it. I apologize if you guys can hear that that sound right there. I don't know why, but recently my neighbor upstairs has the tendency to just start drilling out of nowhere. Because all the buildings in Poland are made from brick and concrete. So the only way you can hang things on your wall is if you drill into concrete. And if you've never drilled into concrete, I can assure you that it is loud as can be. It is super loud. So hopefully that sound isn't too terrible in the microphone. Maybe you guys can't even hear it. I don't know, but hopefully not. I can't imagine that you don't hear that. Just ignore the drilling. Yeah, I apologize, everyone. I don't know. It always, you know, I got lucky. I've lived here for a year and a half in this building for a year and a half, and during my streams, there's never been any drilling or anything like that. It's been fine. And then the past like 3 weeks, it seems that all they want to do is hang things on the wall, or maybe they're just up there randomly drilling holes into their wall. I don't know what they're doing, but they've been drilling since we moved in. Like, I don't know what the heck they're doing, but they always seem to have something they need to hang on the wall. Okay, I think I'm good with that layer. I think I'm good here. So let's take my brush again, some solvent. I'm gonna try to use less solvent here. Just I have a little paper towel because it doesn't seem to be taking. It doesn't seem to take too much. I really want a smooth surface without any visible brush strokes. So I'm gonna try to just kind of dab it a little bit and let the pigment kind of soften, and then slowly work out from there. And hopefully by doing this, I can smooth the whole thing and leave out all the brush strokes. I'll just take my time, I guess. I really want to see how good of an effect I can get here, because the pigment wants to move. It really has no trouble moving. So I don't think it requires barely any solvent on your brush at all, and at this point my brush is pretty much completely dry, and that's the same amount of thinner that I use to smooth out my pencil on regular paper once I've got pretty much a burnished coverage, just to kind of fill in the pinholes. Is the brush not damaged from the paper? So far, no. So there's not really a story, but I've been using this same brush to blend out my colored pencils for the past 4 years. So I hope this paper's not damaging it, because I would hate to have to find another brush that has been so good to me for so long. If I can, I will use this brush all the way up until it's just a nub of bristles. No, probably not that long, because I like the fact that it's a round brush and I can get a nice sharp point with it. Maybe the sanded paper will be good for this brush, actually, you know. Sharpen up the tip a bit. Okay, so far I've been able to hide the brush strokes. I think I need a tiny bit more thinner. Teeny tiny amount. Totally drying it off here. There was one other thing that I was a little bit concerned about with this paper, because it's so texturized. I was wondering, is it possible to get really sharp, clean edges? Like, I'm not gonna try it on this sphere here, because I think I gave up that a long time ago. But I think I'll have to do a little test to see if I can get a nice, clean, sharp edge. And I'm thinking that with the combination of, you know, like just kind of maybe using the Polychromos and then using a tiny bit of the solvent here to blend out that edge, I might be able to get a really nice clean edge. So I don't think there should be any trouble there. Is it an acrylic brush? Technically, it's an acrylic or oil brush. It's a synthetic bristled brush, extremely cheap. It's not. It's Mary's. I've never even heard of Mary's. Mary's artist brush. So there's nothing special about this brush whatsoever. It's just a number 8 round brush, synthetic bristles. Yeah, I had this conversation, I don't know if it was on Patreon or what, but I think it may have been. I've never invested money in brushes. I've always bought whatever is cheap, usually in like a set of like 8 or 9, so that I get like the most bang for my $4. Yeah, they've always treated me well, I guess. Okay, so with that teeny tiny amount of thinner, I appear to have been able to kind of dissipate all remnants of brush strokes for the most part. I'm not going to really go any farther with it. But I gotta say, like, even on camera, that looks pretty cool. With what is he blending? So I'm using Zest It specifically. That's what I'm using, but I often refer to it as solvent or thinner, because you can use I've never come across a brand that doesn't work well. So whether you call it odorless mineral spirits, paint thinner, terpenoid, solvent, or Zest It, just find a solvent that that doesn't bother you with smell. But I recommend Zest It because it's also good for the environment, because it's non-toxic and stuff. Whereas other solvents, you don't necessarily have that. Okay, let's add a reflective highlight down here on the bottom now. And this is going to be a test to see how good the light colors come over top of the dark colors. Oh my gosh. I think I might even have to zoom in a little bit. Let me zoom in here. Let me make sure I'm focused real quick, because you gotta see this. I'm gonna sharpen this pencil just a tad. You can probably already see it, right? It's already shown up, barely touching the paper, okay? I just have to emphasize that. I cannot emphasize it enough, okay? I'm so barely touching the paper that even I can barely hear the pencil scraping. But I wanted to zoom in so you guys can see just how nice this lighter green color is showing up down here on the bottom of this sphere. Now this is going to be the highlight, the reflective highlight from the ground, or you know, whatever. I do get a bit of graininess, which is normal for just about anything. And then once I blend out with the brush again, I can just erase that graininess. But you can see just how opaque this lighter color shows up, and I'm really gonna press into the paper now and see just how it's almost like it doesn't realize that there's this super dark blue right underneath of it. It's like, yeah, so what? I'm gonna show up anyway. If pencils could talk, that is. Look at that. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, it shows up. That's what I'm saying. It shows up so nice. Let me just grab my brush really quick. Tiny bit, teeny tiny amount of solvent. Let me just soften that texture. Smooth it out. Now that will have to dry. It's pretty wet, but I'm sure once it will, that highlight will show up again. So let's just leave that alone. Let's let it dry. Goodness. Let's do a white black test. Okay, so let me zoom back out here. That's the wrong direction. So I'm going to take my Luminance black here. You can see that. Okay, I'm just going to do a square. Actually, I'm just going to do this real quick like this. I want to get a really nice sharp edge, so let's do the edge test. Luminants are notoriously bad for creating clean edges because they're so soft. So that's pretty much as good as it gets with Luminance right there, and it's fuzzy as can be. Let's take some solvent here. Just a tiny bit. And I don't care that there's still some blue there. I'm going to try to create a nice clean edge. Now I'm going to have to wait for it to dry. Okay, so I barely touched the paper with the black. It is one, gosh, that is so black I feel like I could fall into it. Of course it is still wet, so I have to wait for it to dry to really grade it. But this edge here that I created with my brush, very sharp, very clean. Still a tiny bit fuzzy, but you really gotta look. You really gotta look at that edge to see that it's still fuzzy. I'm gonna let that dry. You can see here that that highlight started to show up a bit more there. So yeah, just created a black hole. Like seriously, it's so dark. I can tell it's wet because I can see the light reflecting in it when I. But I've never seen a pencil that black before. It's it's still there. I can't put my finger through it, so it's not a hole. Fix that fingerprint. It does. Okay, so here's something that I can definitely take note of. It takes longer to dry than normal paper. Usually I can't even finish blending out with solvent on normal paper before it's already dry, but I can look at an angle here and see that it's still wet. So I'm gonna have to leave that alone for a little bit so that it dries. In the meantime, while that's drying, I'm gonna grab my Luminance or my Polychromos pencils now, and we're gonna do some Polychromos testing. If I missed any of your guys' questions in the chat, please just make sure you tag me so I can see it a little bit easier. And if I missed it, or whatever, yeah, if I missed it, just tag me and ask me again so I can see it, because there's a lot. Yes, please do, because that's my brand. Not sure. I can't afford Polychromos. Yeah, depending on where you live, Polychromos can fluctuate quite a bit in price, but the same thing with Prismacolors. I've had people say they can't afford Prismacolors because they're like $300 or $400, and I'm like, wow, that's ridiculous, because you can buy the full set most places for like $80, $80, $90 or something like that. So I think it depends on where you live, unfortunately, but you know, Polychromos, I don't think you really need to buy them, to be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of Polychromos. They're nice pencils, and I like to use them in combination with my other pencils, but I don't use them just by themselves because I don't think they're good enough for that. Personally, it's just a personal thing, though. Don't get offended, Polychromos lovers. Okay, so let's use some Polychromos now, and I'm just gonna do the same thing but with a different set of colors. So I'm gonna start here with a nice dark purple. And I don't feel like that didn't take all that long. And that's a pretty big, like, in comparison to my hand size, about the size of my palm. It didn't take that long to fill that circle in. Completely opaque and no texture. Okay, yeah, there's texture. The pigment does rub off. It does rub off quite easily, actually. So you're definitely going to have to use a fixative and seal your work when you're done. course, you should do that regardless of the paper you're working on, but even more so with this. And you'll probably have to use, on normal paper, I usually don't lay like a clean piece of paper down to protect it, but I think with the sandpaper, you're definitely going to have to get in that habit. All right. Yeah, I can imagine that the import tax is what makes the Polychromos more expensive. I have the same problem here in Poland with import tax. It makes everything a lot more expensive for me as well. So I have to, I usually wait as long as I can to buy supplies, and then buy everything that I need all at once. That way I don't have to pay multiple series of taxes on the imports, because they all kind of get lumped into one purchase. Makes it a little bit easier that way for me anyway. That and shipping, oh my goodness. Shipping is ridiculous. Okay. I wonder if I can get rid of that. The Polychromos kind of... Yeah, I don't like that. Okay. The Polychromos, because they're so dense, it actually kind of crumbled into a little bit of a dust. And I cannot get rid of that dust. I wonder if I can erase. Oh, okay. So you can erase. I wonder how well see how well we can erase colored pencil. Okay, did you guys see that? Let's try that again. I didn't even think about trying to erase. Okay, that is definitely colored with colored pencil. Oh my god. Whoa. How clean can I get it? Can I just erase this whole thing? I'm erasing colored pencil. Wow. That is crazy. I didn't even think of testing that out. Look at that. I mean, you guys saw how much color I had down there. That erased unbelievably well. Now my kneaded eraser that I've also had for 1,000,000 years is all purple. Okay, let's color this in. I'm gonna try to speed this process up a little bit. I'm gonna try to do it sloppy, right? So I'll just kind of like throw down some slop like that. That's sloppy, right? Where's my next color? I think this is my next color here. I can't believe how well that erased. Try your electric eraser, if I can find it. I think I got it here. Yeah. I hate electric erasers. It created a lot of dust. I'm not gonna lie. That's what I feel like that eraser just did. I bought an electric eraser like 5 years ago, and I think I've used it like 3 times, including that right there. Because the first time I used it, I was like, well, why do I have this? I feel like all it does is make a mess. And doesn't work any better than a handheld eraser. I think the kneaded eraser for erasing this worked really good. Okay, let's get into our third color here. Remember, I'm doing this sloppy. I want to see how much correction capabilities it has with the solvent. Next color. Try it in that black hole. How it erases that. Okay, let's. So back over here in the black hole. Okay, this is making a terrible mess. Ugh, gross. Well, it definitely erased it. Yeah. It makes a horrible mess. But yeah, I mean, it was even able to erase a black hole. Let's give the kneaded eraser a try now. Let me clean it out a little bit here. Let's try. Yeah, the kneaded eraser works just as well as the electric, but I would say it's better because it doesn't make any mess. So I just erased a little bit of a black hole. That's pretty ridiculous. That's dry now, so let's just zoom in here real quick to our little black hole. Mail you the electric eraser. You won't have to deal with it anymore. Yeah, it just sits in my drawer over there. Okay, so here's the Luminance white, and I'm just gonna draw a circle. You see how well that showed up? That showed up really well. Now let's do a closed circle with a tiny bit of pressure and layering. So I'll just keep adding the white there. Yeah, it's created a little bit of dust. Gosh, I gotta get used to the fact that dusting off with my brush, I love doing that on normal paper, doesn't work. It's really easy to make a mess on this paper. As you can see, I'm trying to fix my mistake and all I'm doing is making more of a mess. Okay, it's ruined. But as you can see, that white really shows up well. Like that passes all expectations of white showing up on black really nicely. Let's jump back up to our Polychromos sphere now. Now let's work our way back with some of this color here. And let's add a little bit more dark purple, I think, just to make sure we get some good coverage when we blend out. But sloppy. Super sloppy. There we go. Which brand of white? That was so that was the Luminance black with the Luminance white over top of it. Try white Polychromos over the black hole. Okay. Try sanding. Try sanding as lightly with corner sandpaper on black hole. What grit of sandpaper? So this is the Uart 800. So it's 800 grit. So here's the oh, I forgot to zoom back out. Here's the Polychromos white on top of the Luminance black hole. Okay, with a bit of pressure, I feel like, yeah, even the Luminance or even the Polychromos white shows up. You can't even tell the difference. Really, you can't. So that is a 100% win. Let me zoom back out, or let me just go over here. There. Alright, so back to the Polychromos sphere. I'm ready to blend out. I need to clean my brush. Let me get another piece of paper towel here. Let me just clean my brush some. That way we don't contaminate our purple, pinks, and reds with green and blue. Alright, let's just start up here. And we are blending. And it's a smeary mess, but that's exactly how the first one looked. I'm going to use a bit more thinner. Not even, I'm just going to smear it. Just going to smear it really, really wet with the solvent here. I'm going to try to do it fast and messy and see how correctable it is. Yeah, as far as I can tell, the Polychromos is looking about the same as the Luminance as far as the way it looked blending out. I feel like I put less layers on this one than I did the Luminance one over there, but I'm hopeful. I feel hopeful here. But those colors are really cool, right? Do you have brush and pencil products to try with that paper? I do have brush and pencil products, yes. And I've already tried them. I've already tried them on this paper, and they work perfectly fine. They work just as well on this paper as they do the Mi Tinta Touch paper. So I'm not going to be trying those out today because I've already done experiments with those and they work amazing and they're great. This is just all about sanded paper using sanded paper instead of regular paper for doing everything that I already do with colored pencils. Whereas the brush and pencil products require a different technique, and I already know that they work. Okay, let's clean my brush. So we got some good coverage down here at the bottom. I feel like I added a little bit more pigment down there, but up here a little less coverage, even though I felt like it was covered up pretty well with the pigment. The translucency overall of Polychromos, I feel like I lean towards the Luminance right now, because I feel like they blended with a better opaqueness a bit easier than the Polychromos. But that's funny, because I didn't think I was going to like the Luminance at all on the sanded paper, because they are thicker, and I didn't think they were going to spread out as well. But the Polychromos, it still needs to dry here, so let's dry that. What are your favorite colored pencils, Luminance? This paper is totally intriguing. Now I'm curious about other mediums, gel pens, markers, etc. I'm guessing it's going to be amazing for chalk pencils, pastel pencils, chalk pastel pencils. Yeah, this paper is really good with the pastels, so I've used it quite a bit, and I've live streamed that as well. Yeah, definitely some galaxy colors here for sure. But it's still wet, so we'll see how the color kind of tones down a bit. We'll see here. It looks like the beginning, it starts to bloom like watercolors, but dries without the blooming. Yeah, that's what I feel like it does. It acts a lot like watercolor when you first initially start blending it out. Like I said, one of the things I don't like so far, I would say the one thing I don't like, period, is that it takes so long to dry. The other thing that I don't like is that the pigment, it becomes dusty and it smears on the rest of the drawing, so you have to be extra careful in that regard. But other than that, I kind of love this. I think my next colored pencil project will be on sanded paper, just to get down and dirty with this this technique with this paper, and just see how it goes from beginning to end. Because this is not really a project. This is just me coloring circles. The thinner lifted the color up top. Yeah, that's what I feel like it did a little bit. I used a bit more thinner on this one than I did this one, but still looks good. Still looks good. I'm gonna start with my light pink here. I think I can safely start adding some colors here. So I'm gonna go in here with my light pink and see how well I can correct this circle. Make sure I cover up the paper completely now. And I think I sharpened one pencil. I think I sharpened that one pencil, that lighter color here, just so I had a finer tip for the detail that I was doing around that edge there. But I didn't really have to sharpen it. So far I was able to confirm that you don't have to sharpen your pencil as much, and that your pencils do go farther, which is really, really counterintuitive, because you would think, oh, you're using sandpaper to color on, isn't that going to grind your pencil down into a nub before you finish, you know, drawing a line? Well, I can confirm that that's definitely not going to happen, and that the opposite is the effect you get. You can see, maybe you can see here that this is still wet, and I'm kind of smearing it around a little bit with this color. But it doesn't seem to affect the paper that it's wet a little bit. It's not too wet, but it is still wet. So that's kind of a plus side, because you can't do that on regular paper. If you try to color on top of your wet paper, you're going to ruin your paper, but I don't seem to be having that issue here. What else can I confirm? I can confirm that this process on sanded paper is faster. It's faster. I wouldn't even be done with this circle right now if I was working on normal paper and I wanted that same quality of color and coverage. And then I can also confirm that white goes over top of black holes. And I don't know if anybody has ever mentioned it, but goodness gracious, was that black. That is super black. Like, so dark black. And I don't... maybe the value quality on sanded paper is farther with, your white and your black, because I didn't try just pure white. Let's let's see if we can make, I don't know what the opposite of a black hole would be. Let's see how white I can get. The tip of my pencil is kind of dirty. I don't think I'll be able to get this pure white, because I need to blend it out with solvent. Let me just grab a different brush. Let me grab a clean brush and just blend out this white spot. Okay, that's, yeah, I still feel like I got it in a little bit of like bluish dust, so it's not pure white. Alright, let's just let that dry. I still don't feel like it's pure white though. It doesn't really, it shows up, but partially because the paper is tan, so let's just forget about that. Alright, what are we doing? Next color. Let's go with this color. Let's continue to fix our Polychromos sphere over here. Would it be possible to combine pastel with the Polychromos Luminance on that paper? I'm gonna say yeah, but with one caveat, and that's I won't do it, because I don't know. A lot of people like mixing the colored pencils and the pastels, but I don't like mixing them. I've tried it before in the past, and it does work, period. It works. You can mix pastels and colored pencils. But their consistency to me is different, and for that difference, I don't like mixing them, personally. But the answer to your question is yes. I like to keep my pastels and my pencils segregated. But if you were to do, say for instance, you blocked off like your main subject, and then you did a pastel background, and then you did your main subject in colored pencils, I think that would work really well, actually. If you wanted to do that, you could totally do that. And you can, to some degree, you can use your colored pencils right over top of your pastels. You just kind of have to like grind off the pastel pigment a little bit to get down to the paper, but it does work. It does work. Gosh, is this still wet? Yeah, this is still wet. You see that? Yeah. Can't believe that's still wet. I feel like I left it alone for quite some time. All right, what's my next color? I think this is it. Yeah. Even though it's wet, it still seems to want to take on the pigment, which is nice. That's a huge leap forward in comparison to normal paper. Oh, take care. Take care, Chris. Alright, dark purple now. Yeah, I can't believe how wet it still is. That's really weird. I was even fanning it with my hand for a little while there. But then again, I have to say that I did kind of bring that on myself by using a ton of thinner. Let me just try to clean my brush. I had a third circle here, but I don't think we're gonna do that. Let's see how long I've been streaming for. Yeah, I think with these experiments that we've done so far, I can make a strong conclusion on this paper. And when I finish this blending here, I think I'll go ahead and close out the live stream, call it a day, give you my final thoughts on working with sanded paper. Though I imagine at this point, if you've been paying attention, you can imagine what my final thoughts are going to be. I'm going to just dab this and try to make it smooth. So even though I was really, really sloppy with, you know, my pencil coloring direction and everything on the Polychromos sphere, it's totally correctable. You can't even see. You can't see any pencil strokes. I mean, at all. You can't even tell I used pencils. This doesn't even look like colored pencils. It looks like pastels. It's like a more controlled pastel without all the dust. Yeah, this is it's pretty good. Getting really good coverage on this second layer here, for sure. Really nice vibrancy. That's also something I need to mention with this paper is, you know, you can get nice vibrancy on regular paper, but I feel like it takes a lot of layering, a lot of patience, but not so much here. Now I have to, this one is dry completely, and it's still really vibrant. The vibrancy that you might be seeing in this sphere right now is partially because it's wet, and it's making the colors kind of shiny and almost glossy like. And that kind of vibrancy doesn't last. Now I'm actually using my darker color on my brush to almost add a texture. So instead of a really smooth ball, I'm getting kind of a textured one here by dabbing it with my darker color. So there's something unique to that. It does look a little like acrylics, yeah. I think it looks more like pastel though. In person, it's hard to gauge that, you know, on camera, but I think it looks it's operating like painting, but once it dries, it looks kind of like pastel. I think you should use that paper with the Luminance. Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. You're wondering if the gessoed hardboard would be good for powder blender. As long as there's not too much texture, it would work. Because I used the sanded gesso Mi-Tenta touch paper. That worked really well with the powder blender. So it should work quite well. Stream keeps cutting off. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But yeah, that's gonna be it. Let me just show the final look. So here's our two spheres. This one is still not dry at all. This one is not dry. But I have to admit, I kind of love working on this paper. It has its ups and downs, but as far as speed, it totally is faster, 100% faster. The truth is, it really does use less of your pencil. You don't have to sharpen as much. The colors are nice, opaque, vibrant. The black is so deep. It's so deep. White and lighter colors over top of dark colors, which is just not going to happen on regular paper. And that's all the positives, right? It's faster, it looks great, uses less pencil. Darks are dark, and your lights are go over your darks. Now for the downside is it's scratchy. It's messy. There's dust particles from the pencils, and the other positive is that it actually erases. You can erase colored pencil, which is really crazy. But it's messy, like I said. There's some cleanup possibilities here with the kneaded eraser, but it is messy, and dust kind of wants to really stick to it. So that's kind of a negative, I guess. What else? It takes a long time for solvents to dry. The pigment wipes off. That's another problem. So this one is totally dry, and I can take my finger and wipe off the pigment. And I don't really like that. It makes your hand messy if you draw in or something. It smears. That's another problem. It smears really easily. I can't brush it. It smears. And I really like dusting off my work with a brush, and I can't do that on the sanded paper. But the bottom line is the pros outweigh the con. I have to admit that for sure. And I think I'm going to be doing my next project on sanded paper. So now I need to go buy some more sanded paper. There's another negative. But my overall impression is definitely inspired, for sure. Yeah, fixative would help. A fixative would definitely help. Less solvent with the Polychromos, for sure. I was trying to make a mess, to be honest with you, DJ. just to see how much correctability there was. And it seems to be endless, to be honest with you. It does look like paint. It totally looks like paint or pastel. You could really not even distinguish between the two. It's like a whole new medium. It's really great. So I have to give it up for Wendy for constantly bringing up sanded paper, and colored pencils, because she definitely inspired this week's drawing journal for sure. So thank you, Wendy, for the constant pressure trying this out, because it was definitely worth it. And I hope that you guys learned some stuff today. I definitely learned a whole bunch, and I'm excited to move forward with this paper in new and exciting ways. What's my favorite fixative? I recommend the brush and pencil fixative. I think that's the best. You can get the textured fixative or the final fixative. Texture fixative is great if you want to add more layers. The final fixative is great if you just want something that, you know, to cover and finish your work with. Yeah, definitely gotta love Wendy. Right, Steve. Totally agree. But like I said, that's my final thoughts, and that's going to be it for today's drawing journal. Thank you all so much for coming by and hanging out. Like I said, hope you learned something. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week for next drawing journal, and make sure you give this video a thumbs up so I know I'm doing something right, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.